All things exist within one consciousness. The world you see, the people you meet, the events that unfold before you are not separate fragments scattered through time and space. They are expressions of one living whole, one divine imagination operating through infinite forms. When you begin to understand that every desire you hold lives within this one field of awareness, you stop trying to separate life into compartments. You realize that your health, your relationships, your success, and your spiritual growth are not independent goals to be chased one by one. They are reflections of a single state of consciousness that you occupy. Most people try to manifest by focusing on individual desires, thinking they must first fix their finances, then attract love, then improve health, and later find purpose. They move from one desire to another as though reality were a checklist of separate tasks. But the truth is that all manifestations flow from one center, your state of being. The outer world is a mirror, and it can only reflect what you are conscious of being. When the inner state is harmonious, everything in your world aligns with that harmony. When it is divided or anxious, the reflection becomes scattered. The cause is never outside you. It is always the inner assumption of what you believe yourself to be. Imagine consciousness as a great tree. Each branch represents an area of your life: wealth, love, health, peace, creativity. Many try to fix the branches, pruning one while ignoring another, thinking the answer lies in the outer form. But the health of the branches depends on the root. Change the condition of the root, and the entire tree transforms naturally. The root is your sense of self, the feeling of I am. What you attach to that statement determines the kind of life that grows from it. When you say to yourself, I am blessed, you nourish every branch. When you say, I am limited, you dry the entire tree. Asterisks see them as different faces of the same wholeness. They are not competing energies. They are different expressions of the same truth. When you feel abundance, that feeling includes health, love, and opportunity. When you feel loved, that state includes prosperity, peace, and creativity. There is no real division in consciousness. Division is only a mental habit born of believing that some areas of life are harder to change than others. To harmonize your manifestations, you must lift your vision to the understanding that the universe is not fragmented. There is one life, one mind, one power flowing through all things, and that power is expressing itself as you. When you truly grasp this, you stop struggling to make each desire happen separately. You begin to work at the level of state, not circumstance. You start asking not how can I get these things, but who must I be for these things to appear naturally. The question of being is everything. Your world faithfully mirrors your inner assumption of identity. If you assume the state of being abundant, generous, and complete, your reality rearranges to prove that assumption true. The experiences you call manifestations are nothing more than shadows, cast by the light of consciousness. The outer world moves as the inner world moves. When you shift the feeling of being, the entire field of experience reshapes itself accordingly. This is why it is possible to manifest many things at once without exhaustion or confusion. You are not creating separate results. You are embodying one expansive state that already contains them all. The mind often protests, saying it is impossible to hold so many desires at once, that one must focus on a single goal or risk scattering energy. But energy cannot be scattered when it flows from oneness. The only time it feels scattered is when it flows from fear, doubt, or separation. When you rest in the awareness of unity, there is no conflict. Everything works together because everything arises from the same consciousness. The feeling of oneness is not a mental exercise. It is an inner knowing that your being is whole, complete, and inseparable from the source of all creation. Once this truth becomes real to you, manifestation ceases to be a matter of control or technique. It becomes an effortless outpouring of your inner nature. You no longer try to manipulate conditions. You simply adjust the feeling of being. The right actions, people, and opportunities appear naturally because they are part of the vibrational pattern of your chosen state. Just as a song is composed of many notes working together in harmony, your life becomes a melody when your inner state is unified. The way to experience this is through awareness. Begin to observe your inner dialogue. Notice how often you separate life into categories of good and bad, possible and impossible. See how the mind divides experiences, thinking that improvement in one area has nothing to do with another. The moment you see this division, you can withdraw attention from it and return to the awareness of I am. That pure awareness is the doorway to unity. It is the foundation of every manifestation because it contains every possible state within it. Now, once you understand that all things come from one consciousness, the next step is to choose a central state to live from. This is the second key. A central state is the emotional and spiritual atmosphere that defines how you see yourself and your world. It is the invisible tone that colors all your thoughts, words, and reactions. Most people shift from one state to another depending on circumstances. They feel joyful when things go well and discouraged when challenges appear. But to manifest multiple things at once, you must choose one dominant feeling and make it your dwelling place. Regardless of appearances, if you were to choose the state of being blessed, every aspect of life would start to rearrange itself to match that vibration. Blessings would appear in expected and unexpected ways. You would meet people who mirror your sense of being favored. Money would come as easily as love, and peace would flow where there was once tension. It would seem as though everything good were happening at once, but in truth, it would be the natural reflection of one stable inner state. This is why some people seem to attract success effortlessly while others struggle for every gain. The difference lies not in effort but in identity. The one who feels successful at the core does not need to chase success. He radiates it. The one who feels abundant does not need to hoard or worry. He naturally moves through opportunities that reveal that abundance. The feeling itself is the cause. When you select a central state that implies the fulfillment of many desires, you become the embodiment of answered prayer. To find your central state, look at your desires collectively and ask what they all have in common. Perhaps you want a loving relationship, financial freedom, vibrant health, and creative purpose. What is the common feeling behind them all? Maybe it is freedom, joy, or divine favor. That common feeling is your key. When you identify it, stop treating it as something to attain and begin living as if it were already your natural state. Feel what it is like to wake each day knowing that everything works in your favor. Imagine the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that life is unfolding perfectly. That feeling is the seed of your central state. Once you anchor yourself in it, every other desire falls into alignment. You no longer need to visualize dozens of separate scenes. You can enter one feeling that implies them all. For example, if your central state is abundance, you can imagine a single moment of overflowing gratitude. In that moment, you might see yourself giving freely, celebrating success, enjoying health, surrounded by love. That single feeling harmonizes all your desires because it springs from a consciousness of having, rather than wanting. Living from a central state does not mean you ignore individual desires. It means you see them as expressions of your chosen identity. If your central state is joy, then health is joy expressed in the body. Wealth is joy expressed in experience. Love is joy expressed in relationship. Each area of life becomes a channel through which your inner state reveals itself. This approach removes tension from manifestation. Instead of juggling desires, you radiate one frequency that automatically attracts experiences in harmony with it. There is immense power in simplicity. When you focus on a single state of being, your imagination becomes clear, your emotions steady, and your actions inspired. Confusion fades because you are no longer trying to manage outcomes. You are simply maintaining a vibration. From this center, every prayer is already answered. The more consistently you dwell in your chosen feeling, the faster the outer world conforms to it. You begin to see synchronicities everywhere, small evidences that reality is bending to your assumption. This practice also dissolves fear of contradiction. When you live from the end, you no longer worry about how things will happen. You know that the outer world must eventually echo the inner conviction. You understand that imagination is the creative cause of all that exists. By remaining faithful to your chosen state, you give form to the invisible. Time becomes a servant rather than an obstacle. In moments of doubt, return to the feeling of your central state. Do not argue with appearances. Do not chase solutions. Simply remind yourself that everything you desire already exists within the feeling you have chosen. Rest in that awareness until peace returns. In this quiet assurance, manifestation becomes natural. The world cannot resist the one who knows his state of being, because the world is only the projection of that state. The truth is that you do not need to manifest many things. You only need to become one who embodies the feeling that contains them all. The central state is like the sun. When it rises, every shadow disappears. Choose your sun wisely. Whether it is love, abundance, peace, or divine favor, let it be the atmosphere in which you live, move, and have your being. From that center, multiple manifestations are not separate achievements. They are inevitable expressions of the one reality you have chosen to occupy. When this understanding becomes natural, your inner world changes first. You begin to notice that your reactions are softer, your expectations brighter, and your faith unshakable. Then, without strain, life begins to reflect your new state. The right people appear, opportunities align, and desires manifest together as though guided by an unseen intelligence. And in truth, they are, for the unseen intelligence is your own imagination fulfilling its chosen vision. The power has always been within you. The moment you stop dividing life and start living from the unity of your chosen state, you unlock a level of manifestation that feels effortless. You become the embodiment of divine order, and everything you desire moves into harmony with your being. This is how multiple manifestations unfold, through the understanding that there is only one consciousness, one root, one central state, and that consciousness is your own wonderful human imagination. Imagination is the foundation of everything you will ever experience. It is not a daydream or fantasy that lives apart from reality. It is the very cause of reality itself. The world that you call physical is nothing more than the crystallized shadow of imagination, made visible. Every building you see, every invention, every relationship, every event that unfolds began first as an imaginal act within someone's mind. The invisible preceded the visible. When you look at life through the lens of imagination, the limits you once believed in begin to dissolve. What seems like resistance or coincidence is revealed as the perfect reflection of what you have been inwardly entertaining. The imagination is not passive. It is an active creative power. Every time you think, feel, or visualize something with conviction, you plant a seed in the fertile soil of consciousness. These seeds take root and grow in the unseen until they bear fruit in the visible world. Most people, unaware of this law, imagine unconsciously, allowing fear, doubt, and limitation to shape their reality. They react to appearances, strengthening the very conditions they wish to change. To manifest multiple things at once, you must first reclaim this power of imagination and use it deliberately. The outer world does not respond to effort or struggle. It responds to the imaginal act accepted as true. The imagination must become more real to you than what your senses report. When you close your eyes and enter into a scene implying your wish fulfilled, you are not escaping reality. You are entering the higher dimension from which reality flows. The world of imagination is the creative cause. The world of senses is the effect. To change the effect, you must change the cause. Begin by choosing scenes that imply the fulfillment of your desires. Suppose you wish to experience wealth, love, and health. You do not need to imagine each in great detail. It is enough to construct a simple imaginal moment that naturally includes them all. Perhaps you see yourself in a joyful celebration, feeling gratitude for how beautifully life has unfolded. In that single act of imagination, you encompass the entire field of desire. The feeling you generate becomes the creative command that sets the unseen forces of life into motion. Feel the scene as though it were happening right now. Engage your senses. Hear the sounds, see the colors, feel the textures, breathe the air of your fulfilled state. When the imaginal scene feels natural and complete, you have impressed it upon the subconscious mind. From that moment, the world must conform to it, for the subconscious is the womb of creation. It does not reason or question. It simply reproduces what it has been impressed with. Doubt and impatience are signs that the imaginal act has not yet been accepted as true. You need not repeat the scene endlessly in fear that it will not work. Rather, you return to it only to deepen your conviction that it is already done. The act of creation takes place in the instant you feel the reality of your desire. Time is merely the interval between the imaginal seed and its physical harvest. When you persist in the awareness that imagination creates reality, you stop being shaken by appearances. You know that what you see now is only the echo of past imaginal activity, and new imaginal acts will produce new echoes in time. To live this way requires a reversal of ordinary thinking. Most people believe imagination follows fact, but the truth is that fact follows imagination. You imagine first, then the event appears. If you wish to know what you have been imagining, simply look at your life. It is a perfect reflection. Once this realization takes hold, you no longer waste energy blaming others or fighting against conditions. You turn inward, for you know the cause is within. You understand that every problem is an imaginal misalignment, and every solution is an imaginal correction. The imagination is not bound by the limitations of logic or reason. It moves freely through the infinite possibilities of consciousness. When you imagine something vividly and persistently, you lift it out of the realm of possibility into the realm of certainty. The outer world then bends to accommodate that inner certainty. This is why two people can live in the same city, work in the same building, and yet inhabit completely different realities. Each is living from a different imaginal assumption. and life mirrors each assumption with precision. The imagination is also the bridge between the seen and unseen worlds. It is the creative link between God and man, between spirit and matter. When you enter a scene in imagination, you are not pretending. You are communing with the higher dimension where every desire already exists as a fact. The moment you feel the scene is real, you fuse with that reality, and it must eventually objectify itself in a world of form. To doubt this law is to cut yourself off from the source of all creation. To believe it is to awaken to your true nature as the imaginer and not the imagined. When you practice imagination deliberately, you begin to notice subtle shifts in your awareness. The world seems to grow softer, more responsive, as though waiting for your command. You realize that you are not pushed by external forces but moved from within. The line between the seen and unseen blurs, and you begin to trust your inner world more than the evidence of your senses. This is not delusion. It is mastery. The senses report what imagination has decreed, and when you know this, you use them wisely, never allowing appearances to dictate the mood of your soul. This law states that you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and live from that assumption until it hardens into fact. You cannot simultaneously assume lack and expect abundance, nor can you dwell in fear and expect peace. Every assumption is a seed that must reproduce after its kind. When you persist in the feeling that your desire is already realized, you call into being the conditions that will make it visible. The assumption must be felt, not merely thought. It is not enough to say, "I am wealthy," while feeling poor. The subconscious responds only to feeling, for feeling is the language of creation. When you claim within yourself that something is already true and you feel the relief, gratitude, and joy of its completion, you have sown the seed. The outer world will respond automatically, ranging itself through people, circumstances, and events to mirror your inner conviction. The how and when are not your concern. Your only task is to remain faithful to the feeling. This is why faith is so powerful. Faith is not blind belief. It is the knowing that what you imagine and assume is already a fact in the unseen. You do not hope for it. You know it. When you walk in that knowing, life bends to match your assumption. You cease to ask whether it will happen and begin to live as though it already has. The invisible becomes your reality, and the visible world is compelled to follow. Many fail in their manifestations because they continue to assume two opposite states. They imagine success at night and then wake in the morning worrying about failure. They affirm health while talking of illness, affirm abundance while complaining of lack. The subconscious cannot serve two masters. It accepts the dominant feeling as truth. Therefore, discipline of mind is essential. You must watch your inner conversation and redirect it toward your chosen end. Whenever it drifts into doubt or contradiction, assumption is not effort. It is acceptance. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing the creative process is complete. When you assume, you move beyond wishing and into being. You think, speak, and act from the position of fulfillment. Every time you do, you reinforce that reality in consciousness until it becomes the only truth you know. Then, as night follows day, the outer world reflects it back to you. Imagine a person who desires wealth. If he continues to feel poor, counting every coin and worrying about bills, he will only perpetuate poverty. But if he assumes the feeling of financial freedom, even before any outer evidence appears, he begins to live as though wealth were natural to him. His thoughts, decisions, and energy align with that assumption, and soon the world begins to move in ways that reveal the wealth he had already accepted inwardly. The same law applies to every desire. You cannot have what you do not first assume yourself to be. The law of assumption also reveals the futility of trying to force change through outer action alone. Action without inner conviction leads to struggle, but when action springs naturally from the feeling of the wish fulfilled, it becomes effortless. The world responds because it is only the extension of your inner state. The assumption is the invisible cause, and the outer action is its visible expression. To master this law, you must learn to dwell in the end. Dwelling in the end means to live from the state of your fulfilled desire rather than toward it. You think, feel, and respond to life as the person who already has what you want. This shift in identity is the essence of creation. The world around you rearranges itself to reflect your new state of being. What once seemed impossible becomes inevitable, for the universe has no choice but to mirror the consciousness that animates it. When you understand this, you stop asking how long it will take or what you must do. You rest in the awareness that the assumption is the seed and that every seed contains within itself the power and pattern of its fulfillment. You trust the unseen process, knowing that nothing can prevent the manifestation of a firmly held assumption. The world may appear unchanged for a time, but beneath the surface, everything is moving toward the expression of your inner reality. The law of assumption does not demand strain or intensity. It demands consistency. Each time you return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you reinforce the truth of your assumption. Each time you react in harmony with that state, you water the seed. Eventually, it grows into fact so naturally that you may forget you ever imagined it. You will look at your life and call it coincidence, but it is not coincidence, it is law. The imagination is the workshop, and assumption is the act of claiming ownership over what you have created there. Together they form the process of manifestation. To imagine vividly and assume faithfully is to command the creative power of the universe. Nothing is withheld from the one who understands and practices this. For the imagination, disciplined by assumption, becomes the voice of God within you, speaking world into beings. Many people begin the journey of conscious creation with excitement, but soon find themselves tangled in confusion. They have so many desires: love, health, success, freedom, and they wonder how to manifest them all without losing focus. They try to visualize one thing, then shift to another, fearing that focusing on multiple desires will somehow weaken the process. But the truth is that manifestation was never meant to be a juggling act. It is not about managing dozens of separate creations. It is about moving into harmony with the natural flow of life. When you attempt to force manifestations into existence, you create inner resistance. You become tense and impatient, which only pushes your desires further away. The creative power of the universe is not accessed through strain. It responds to a state of relaxed confidence, to a quiet knowing that what you seek is already yours. To harmonize your manifestations, you must let go of the anxious need to make things happen and instead move into the peaceful, knowing that they already have. When you rest in that awareness, you discover that life unfolds effortlessly. Desires that once seemed separate begin to work together as parts of one great whole. This harmony comes from understanding that all manifestations arise from the same source, your consciousness. If you feel divided inside, your outer world will reflect that division. But if you feel unified, if you live from one steady vibration of fulfillment, everything aligns naturally. The house, the relationship, the opportunity, the health, they are not competing creations. They are expressions of one inner state of being. When you feel complete within yourself, that completeness spills into every area of life. You do not need to direct or manage the process. You simply maintain the feeling of wholeness, and the universe takes care of the details. Imagine a composer writing a symphony. He does not separately think about every instrument or every note in isolation. He feels the entire composition as one piece. Every part of the orchestra moves in harmony, because they are all expressions of a single musical vision. Manifestation works in the same way. When you feel the totality of fulfillment, every desire becomes an instrument playing in tune with your inner state. You are not forcing the music. You are allowing it to express itself through you. Many people ask how they can manifest love and money and health at the same time. The answer is simple. Stop trying to manifest them separately. Instead, feel what it would be like to live in a state where everything works together perfectly. Picture yourself at peace, secure in the knowledge that life is supporting you in every way. Feel the satisfaction of knowing that you are loved, healthy, and abundant. Do not focus on the individual details, but on the overall sense of harmony that comes from having it all. That feeling is your creative signal to the universe. When it becomes natural to you, everything you desire will gravitate toward that vibration. The universe is not fragmented, and neither are you. When you accept this truth, manifestation becomes effortless. You begin to see that there is no need to fight, to rush, or to compete with time. You understand that the law is always working and that its operation is simple. Whatever you assume to be true inwardly will appear outwardly. Once you grasp this, you stop struggling to control the branches and start nurturing the root. The root is your feeling of being. When the root is strong, the entire tree of your life flourishes. The art of manifestation is not about adding more effort, but removing resistance. Resistance arises when you question, doubt, or contradict your desires with worry. The moment you start thinking about how or when your manifestations will appear, you step out of harmony. You become like a musician who suddenly doubts the melody halfway through the song. The tune falters not because the music is wrong, but because the player lost faith in it. Harmony returns the instant you stop questioning and begin trusting again. To live in harmony with your desires, you must feel the end is already done. This means you no longer chase the desire or wonder when it will arrive. You claim its fulfillment now. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the magnetic force that draws the unseen into the seen. It is not mere wishful thinking. It is the creative act itself. When you feel the end is real, the law of assumption begins to operate automatically. The outer world rearranges itself in ways you could never predict or plan. People, circumstances, and events move into position to reflect your inner knowing. The greatest secret is that imagination and emotion work together. When you visualize your fulfilled desire and feel the joy of it, you send a clear signal to the subconscious mind. The subconscious accepts this feeling as fact and begins to express it through action, inspiration, and coincidence. This is why harmonizing your feelings is more powerful than endlessly visualizing details. The details will appear on their own once the emotional vibration is consistent. When you feel content, confident, and grateful, life cannot help but mirror that state. When you begin to harmonize with your desires, you stop seeing them as things to get and start recognizing them as states of consciousness to embody. Love is a state, abundance is a state, health is a state, and all states exist within you. You can move from one state to another by changing how you feel and what you assume to be true about yourself. The moment you embody a new state, everything in your world begins to shift to match it. This is the essence of effortless manifestation. This means you create an imaginal scene that implies that all your desires have already been fulfilled, and you dwell in that scene until it feels natural. Living from the end is not pretending. It is choosing to inhabit the feeling of completion now. When you do this, you no longer send out the vibration of wanting or waiting. Instead, you send the vibration of having and being, which immediately draws its likeness to you. Creating one imaginal scene that contains the fulfillment of multiple desires is one of the most effective ways to manifest quickly. For example, imagine yourself at a joyful gathering with friends or family, celebrating the wonderful changes in your life. You might hear someone congratulating you on your success, another admiring your good health, and another expressing joy for your happy relationship. In that single imaginal act, you imply the fulfillment of love, prosperity, and wellness. You do not need to separate them. They all exist within the same feeling of satisfaction. This practice is powerful because the subconscious mind understands feeling, not words. It does not care about the specific story. It responds to the emotional tone of completion. If you feel gratitude, excitement, or relief, the subconscious takes that as evidence that your desire is real. It then begins to shape reality accordingly. The more often you visit your imaginal scene and feel its reality, the stronger its roots become in consciousness, and soon it begins to bear fruit in your outer world. Living from the end collectively also trains your mind to think from completion rather than lack. Most people imagine from their desires instead of from them. They think of what they want as something far away, something to be achieved someday. But when you live from the end, you think, feel, and act as the person who already possesses it. This shift in perspective changes everything. You stop seeking and start expressing. You stop asking for proof and begin expecting evidence. The energy of your being becomes one of certainty, and certainty is magnetic. When you live from the end, the feeling of satisfaction becomes your home. You may visit doubt or fear, but you no longer live there. You always return to the inner knowing that it is done. This mental atmosphere attracts everything that matches it. Opportunities seem to rise by chance, but they are not chance. They are the natural outworking of your assumption. People who once overlooked you suddenly notice you. Doors that were closed swing open. The world reorganizes itself to accommodate your new state of consciousness. In this practice, imagination is your most faithful servant. It does not question your orders. It only brings forth what you impress upon it. When you imagine the end with conviction, you instruct your subconscious to produce that experience. The outer world may take time to reflect the inner change, but it must eventually do so. For imagination is the cause and the physical world is the effect. The two are inseparable. The power of collective imagining is that it eliminates contradiction. When you try to manifest individual desires separately, you sometimes create conflicting assumptions. You may imagine wealth but still assume loneliness, or imagine health but still assume fear. Each assumption carries its own vibration, and they may clash. But when you create one imaginal scene that contains the fulfillment of all, harmony replaces conflict. You feel the wholeness of life as one completed picture, and that wholeness expresses itself through every channel. Living from the end collectively also deepens your faith. When you see yourself in imagination as already fulfilled, you stop doubting. You no longer beg for results. You rest in assurance. You realize that the law never fails and that imagination always creates according to its nature. Faith is not trying to believe. It is knowing that the unseen is already real. Each time you return to your imaginal scene and feel its truth, you strengthen that faith. This way of living transforms not only your outer circumstances, but also your inner world. You begin to notice that peace replaces anxiety, joy replaces striving, and love replaces fear. You realize that manifestation is not a race to get things, but a journey of awakening to who you truly are, the source of all creation. From this awareness, manifesting multiple things at once becomes effortless because you are no longer operating from separation. You are operating from unity. When you live from the end collectively, every aspect of your life becomes a reflection of one harmonious state. You no longer see some areas as blessed and others as cursed. Everything begins to work together as a single expression of your inner alignment. The same power that brings one desire to life brings all others into being. You are no longer waiting for anything to complete you. You are living as one who is already complete. To practice this daily, spend moments throughout the day returning to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, whether through visualization, inner dialogue, or quiet contemplation. Remind yourself of the scene that represents your completed life. Feel the satisfaction of knowing it is done. Let that feeling saturate your awareness until it becomes second nature. When it does, manifestation is no longer an effort. It becomes the natural unfolding of your being, and every desire aligns itself with that one powerful state of completion. When you begin to understand the law of creation, you realize that the greatest obstacle to manifestation is not lack of power but lack of patience. So many people plant the seeds of their desires and imagination and then destroy them. By constantly looking for evidence that they are growing, they want signs, proof, and immediate results, forgetting that every seed must go through a period of unseen growth before it appears above the surface. Faith is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It is the quiet confidence that knows the unseen is already real, even when there is no sign of it in a world of facts. Faith over time is not passive waiting. It is active trust. It is the willingness to stand firm in the feeling of the wish fulfilled despite appearances to the contrary. The impatient mind wants to know when and how the manifestation will happen, but the creative process cannot be rushed. Just as a seed must take time to root, your desires must be given space to unfold in their perfect sequence. When you understand this, you stop measuring your faith by the calendar. Time is not an enemy but a servant of your assumption. It arranges events in their natural order so that your desire can be expressed at the perfect moment. Every moment of doubt, every emotional outburst of fear or frustration, is a signal that you have forgotten your creative power. You do not need to fight against these moments, only to gently return to the knowing that the imaginal act was the act of creation. Once the feeling of the wish fulfilled has been experienced, the seed has been planted. You cannot force it to grow faster by worrying about it. Worry is the equivalent of digging up the seed to check if it has sprouted. The wise creator trusts the process and waters the seed with confidence and gratitude. Faith is a discipline of inner vision. It is the art of seeing the unseen and knowing that what you have imagined is already a fact in the higher dimension of consciousness. This higher realm is more real than the physical world because it is the cause of everything that appears. The visible world is only the shadow cast by invisible states of consciousness. To live by faith means to align yourself with the unseen reality of your desire, and to ignore the evidence of the senses until they conform. This is not denial of facts. It is the recognition that facts are temporary reflections of past assumptions. When you assume a new state and persist in that assumption, the facts must eventually change. You can observe this law in every area of life. Consider the inventor who dreams of a new machine. Before a single piece of metal is shaped, the invention already exists fully in his imagination. He believes in its reality even when no one else can see it. He may face failure, doubt, or ridicule, yet his faith in the unseen idea sustains him. In time, the idea becomes visible, and the world calls it innovation. But to the inventor, it was always real. This same faith applies to every desire. When you imagine yourself living in your wish fulfilled, that imaginal act is as real as the inventor's design. It only requires your steadfast confidence to bring it forth. Faith over time is not about waiting idly for things to happen. It is about maintaining inner stability regardless of appearances. When storms of doubt appear, you return to the inner knowing that the law never fails. You remember that creation is finished, that every possible outcome already exists, and that you are simply selecting the one you wish to experience. Your persistence is not a fight against the world. It is a calm assurance that the unseen is already true. When you walk in that assurance, your state of being becomes unshakable, and the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. This kind of faith also requires surrender. You surrender the need to control how things unfold and allow divine intelligence to orchestrate the details. The conscious mind is limited in its understanding of the infinite possibilities available. The moment you decide what you want and feel it as real, the creative power within you begins to move in ways you cannot predict. Opportunities arise, people appear, and events align to fulfill your desire. The only requirement from you is to remain faithful to the end, to hold fast to the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it becomes fact. Many lose faith because they measure progress by visible results instead of inner conviction. They think nothing is happening because they cannot see movement, not realizing that most of the creative process occurs in the invisible realm. Just as the roots of a tree grow deep before its branches appear, your manifestation is building strength in the unseen before it becomes visible. When you understand this, patience becomes natural. You stop looking for results and start living in the feeling of completion. This state of inner fulfillment is itself the proof that the law is working. Faith over time transforms your character. It teaches you to rely on the invisible, to trust the power that works through you rather than against you. Each manifestation becomes easier than the last because your confidence grows. You begin to live in a continuous state of expectancy, knowing that what you imagine must come to pass. This expectancy is the hallmark of mastery. It is not arrogance or wishful thinking. It is the serene awareness of the law in action. The companion to faith is gratitude, for gratitude seals the work of creation. Gratitude is the divine signature of completion. It is the inner acknowledgement that your desire is already fulfilled. When you give thanks before the evidence appears, you are proclaiming that the work is finished in consciousness. Gratitude is not merely good manners. It is creative power. It sends a clear signal to the subconscious that you already possess what you desire, and the subconscious responds by producing experiences that match that feeling. True gratitude is not dependent on conditions. It does not wait for physical proof to appear. It begins and ends within the feeling of fulfillment. When you thank the unseen for your answered prayer, you shift your attention from lack to abundance. You begin to see life through the eyes of completion rather than longing. This shift in perception changes everything because it aligns you with the frequency of having, rather than wanting. Gratitude therefore becomes the emotional confirmation that the manifestation is complete. Imagine you have planted a garden. After sowing the seeds, you do not stand over the soil begging it to grow. Instead, you trust that nature is doing its work. You water the soil, you smile, and you feel thankful for the harvest that is coming. That gratitude keeps you aligned with the natural flow of life. In the same way, once you have imagined your desire fulfilled, you must water it with gratitude. Each thankful thought is nourishment to your creation. It keeps you connected to the state of having, and prevents you from slipping back into the vibration of wanting. Gratitude is also the antidote to fear and doubt. You cannot feel truly thankful and fearful at the same time. When fear tries to whisper that your desire will not happen, answer it with gratitude. Thank the unseen power for already bringing your desire to pass. This simple act of appreciation silences the voice of worry and strengthens your faith. It reminds you that the creative process is already complete, that what you seek is already yours in the invisible, waiting only for your continued belief to make it visible. When you cultivate gratitude, you begin to notice abundance everywhere. The smallest events become signs of alignment. The sunrise feels like a personal blessing. The kindness of a stranger feels like confirmation. And every challenge feels like an opportunity for greater understanding. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is missing to what is already present. And this shift multiplies your blessings. The law responds to the dominant feeling you hold. And gratitude is the feeling of fullness. When you feel full, life mirrors that fullness back to you in every area. This is why gratitude is often described as the final step in the creative process. It seals the imaginal act in the subconscious mind, ensuring that it becomes a fixed reality. When you give thanks sincerely and repeatedly, you reinforce the assumption that the desire is already complete. Each expression of gratitude deepens your identification with the fulfilled state, until it becomes your natural way of being. Then, without effort, the outer world rearranges itself to match that inner condition. To live in gratitude is to live in harmony with the universe. You stop struggling and start flowing. You no longer approach life as something to conquer, but as something to celebrate. Every moment becomes evidence of divine order. Every event a reflection of your inner faith. Gratitude keeps you attuned to the truth that all things work together for your good. Even the delays and detours reveal themselves as perfect parts of the process. When viewed through thankful eyes, gratitude also carries an expansive energy. When you feel grateful for one blessing, you open the door to more. The feeling of appreciation acts as a magnet for greater abundance. It tells the universe, I am ready for more of this. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Until gratitude is no longer something you do but something you are. It becomes your constant atmosphere, the background music of your life. Faith and gratitude together form the rhythm of creation. Faith is the quiet knowing that the invisible is real, and gratitude is the joyful recognition that it is done. One holds the vision, the other celebrates its completion. When these two work together, manifestation becomes effortless. You no longer push against life, you move with it. The world responds not to your words or your wishes, but to the emotional certainty that you already possess what you seek. Faith creates the foundation, and gratitude completes the structure. Every great spiritual teaching points to this same truth. The moment you believe that you have received, you shall have it. That belief is faith, and the expression of it is gratitude. The two are inseparable. When you say thank you before seeing results, you are demonstrating faith in the unseen power that governs all creation. You are acknowledging that your assumption has already been accepted by the creative mind. In that moment, your manifestation is sealed, and nothing can prevent it from appearing in perfect time. The practice of living in faith and gratitude transforms the way you see the world. It turns every experience into evidence of divine order. You stop worrying about what is missing and begin celebrating what is unfolding. You realize that manifestation is not about forcing reality to change, but about allowing the unseen perfection to reveal itself. Faith opens the door, gratitude keeps it open, and together they invite every good thing into your life. When these two qualities become natural to you, the outer world begins to move with grace and precision. What once required effort now happens effortlessly. You no longer question when or how. You simply know that everything is working in your favor. Faith becomes your resting place, gratitude your constant song, and life itself becomes a mirror reflecting your inner certainty.